The vehicle crawled through the untamed wilderness of Kruger National Park. Dust clouds rose behind the wheels as Alex navigated the bumpy dirt roads, winding through dense scrub forests that seemed to stretch endlessly under the relentless African sun. He had driven these paths 1,000 times before, but today felt different. Today, something pulled him toward a specific destination, deep within the park's heart. After what felt like an eternity, Alex stopped at one particular spot. Before him stood a massive baobab tree, its thick trunk scarred by decades of wind and weather, its branches reaching toward the sky like ancient arms. He stepped out of the vehicle slowly, his movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. His weathered hand reached out and touched the rough bark, and instantly, memories from 15 years ago came flooding back with overwhelming clarity. This was it. This was the place where he had saved a small life all those years ago. Under the blazing African sun, Alex leaned his back against the tree's solid trunk, and a faint smile crossed his sun-weathered lips. An inexplicable peace filled his chest, spreading warmth through his entire body. It felt like meeting an old friend after years apart, like coming home after a long journey. Everything seemed just like yesterday, yet also a lifetime ago. A breeze came, warm and gentle, carrying the sense of Africa with it. Alex breathed deeply, savoring every molecule, the smell of red earth, of wild grass, of untamed wilderness. Everything he had ever loved was here, in this moment, in this place. Then, without warning, a sharp pain pierced through his chest like a lightning bolt. Alex tried desperately to grab onto the tree for support, but his strength drained away like water through his fingers. His knees buckled beneath him, and his body slowly collapsed onto the dry earth. The brilliant blue sky filled his vision, endless and eternal, with white clouds drifting slowly overhead like peaceful spirits. Alex Morgan, legendary ranger of Kruger National Park, with a peaceful smile still gracing his face, quietly closed his eyes in the place of his happiest memories. He had chosen well. 2 hours had passed since Alex left the ranger station on his routine patrol, but Alex had not returned. The radio received no response despite repeated calls. Growing increasingly concerned, the rangers checked the vehicle tracking system. Alex's truck showed as stationary, deep in the park's interior, approximately 30 minutes away from the station. With hearts heavy with worry, they immediately headed straight there, driving as fast as the terrain would allow. When they finally arrived at the location, they found Alex lying quietly beneath the ancient baobab tree, looking almost peaceful, as if he were merely sleeping. Colleague Mark rushed over frantically and checked for a pulse at Alex's neck. Nothing. He checked for breathing, placing his ear near Alex's mouth. Nothing. He checked for a heartbeat, pressing his hand against Alex's chest. But Alex had already passed away, his journey in this world complete. Mark sank to his knees beside his mentor's body, sobbing uncontrollably. The sound of his grief echoed through the wilderness. Tom, Alex's closest colleague and friend of nearly 20 years, moved to check inside Alex's vehicle, perhaps looking for some explanation, some clue as to what had happened. There on the passenger seat, he discovered a document that made everything suddenly, painfully clear. A hospital diagnosis, dated 1 month prior. Terminal heart disease, advanced stage, inoperable. Tom's hands trembled violently as he held the paper. The words seemed to blur before his eyes. Why? Why didn't you tell anyone, Alex? Why did you carry this burden alone? All of Alex's colleagues fell into deep, profound grief. To them, Alex was not merely a senior colleague or supervisor. He had been like a father figure, a mentor, a guiding light. The realization that they had lost him and that he had faced his final days alone without sharing his pain shattered their hearts into pieces. 3 days later, a funeral was held on a small hill overlooking Kruger National Park. As Alex had wished in the will they discovered, his final resting place would be here, in the wilderness he had protected faithfully for 30 years of his life. It was only fitting. Over 200 people gathered on that hill, fellow rangers from across the region, park staff, veterinarians, researchers, and countless local people whose lives he had touched over the decades. The simple wooden casket was placed carefully on the ground, and people stood in a wide circle, quietly mourning the man who had given everything to protect this land and its creatures. The park director stepped forward and read the eulogy, his voice breaking with emotion. Alex Morgan was a legendary ranger who dedicated his entire life to protecting this wilderness for 30 years. His unwavering dedication, his boundless compassion, and his deep love for every creature here lives on in the very soil beneath our feet, in every tree, in every animal that roams free because of his protection. People bowed their heads in reverence. Some wiped away silent tears. Others bit their lips, fighting to maintain composure. The air was heavy with loss and respect. Then at that very moment, from somewhere in the distance came an unexpected sound. Heavy breathing, steady footsteps, the rustling of grass. As people turned their heads toward the sound, everyone's breath caught in their throats simultaneously. What they saw seemed impossible, like something from a dream or legend. 3 albino lions, a complete family, were slowly, deliberately climbing the hill toward the funeral gathering. Screams erupted from the crowd. People stumbled backward in primal terror, their instincts screaming danger. Rangers immediately stepped forward, positioning themselves tensely between the lions and the mourners. Armed guards moved into defensive positions, rifles raised and ready, fingers hovering near triggers. But the lions did not attack. They did not even seem interested in the humans at all. A massive lioness led the way, her movements graceful and purposeful, with a proud male lion walking steadily beside her. Between them, carefully guided by both adults, walked a small cub, moving cautiously on young legs, learning the way. They simply walked slowly, quietly, directly toward the spot where the casket lay. As if drawn by an invisible force, people could barely breathe. Hearts pounded, minds raced with terrifying possibilities. Were these hungry predators coming for the body? Fear and tension filled the air like an electric charge, ready to explode at any moment. The lioness stopped precisely 3 meters from the casket, as if respecting an invisible boundary. Then, with extraordinary grace, she sat down slowly, her powerful body settling onto the earth. The male and cub quietly took their places beside her, creating a perfect tableau. The lioness lowered her magnificent head toward the casket in what could only be described as a gesture of respect. Then a low, long cry emerged from deep within her chest. It was not a roar of aggression or dominance. It was something else entirely. It was grief. It was mourning. It was the sound of a broken heart. People stood speechless, frozen in place. What on earth was happening before their eyes? After sitting there in solemn silence for some time, the lioness slowly raised her head. Brilliant sunlight illuminated her form, making her appear almost ethereal. Her cream-colored fur, nearly pure white, seemed to glow in the golden light. And her eyes were not the golden amber of normal lions, but a striking, mystical blue. Tom, Alex's closest colleague, drew a sharp, sudden breath as a recognition hit him like a physical blow. A blue-eyed albino lion. There was only one in all of Kruger Park, only one in the entire region. 15 years ago, this was the very lion Alex had saved. The orphaned cub he had nursed back to health. The life he had protected when no one else believed it could survive. The memories came rushing back to Tom with crystal clarity now. 15 years earlier, it had also been a scorching summer day, much like this one. Alex and Tom were on routine patrol through the park's southern sector. Suddenly, a strange, heartbreaking sound came from somewhere nearby in the bush. The desperate crying of a young animal in distress. What they discovered when they investigated was a horrific scene that would haunt them for years. A massive lioness lay dead, her body twisted unnaturally, caught in a brutal poacher's trap that had ended her life slowly and painfully. And beside her, crying pitifully, was a 3-month-old cub, her offspring, now orphaned and helpless. But this cub was different from ordinary lions. Its fur was nearly pure white, catching the light like silver. Its eyes were a mystical, deep blue, the unmistakable traits of an albino lion, one of nature's rarest creations. Alex immediately knelt down in the dust and approached the cub carefully, speaking in soft, soothing tones. The cub was nearly dead from dehydration and starvation, having stayed loyally by its mother's body for days. Its tiny body was weak, ribs showing, eyes glazed with exhaustion and grief. Tom said quietly, his voice heavy with sadness, "Alex, the mother is dead. This cub can't possibly survive alone in the wild. It's too young, too vulnerable. Nature will take its course." But Alex shook his head firmly. He carefully picked up the fragile cub with gentle hands. The cub was too weak to even resist or show fear. It simply gazed up at Alex with those remarkable blue eyes, as if seeing something in him that inspired trust. Alex spoke gently to the frightened creature. "Don't you worry, little one. It's going to be okay. We won't leave you out here alone. You're safe now." First, they carefully buried the mother lion where she lay, giving her the dignity she deserved. Then they took the orphaned cub to the park's rescue center, cradling it gently during the entire journey. According to standard regulations, the cub should have been transferred to another sanctuary with better facilities for long-term care. But Alex immediately volunteered without hesitation. He would personally care for it himself for however long it took. For one entire year, Alex devoted himself to caring for the cub daily, treating it almost like his own child. At first, he bottle-fed its special formula every few hours, even through the night. When it was sick, running a dangerous fever, he stayed by its side all night long, monitoring every breath. Tom and other colleagues often came to help, and that remarkable blue-eyed cub became special to everyone at the station, a symbol of hope and resilience. The cub grew rapidly under Alex's devoted care, and it showed deep attachment to him specifically. Whenever Alex approached, it would wag its tail enthusiastically, like an oversized kitten, and lick his hands affectionately, purring with contentment. 4 seasons passed in this way, and the small, fragile cub had transformed into a healthy, powerful adult lioness. Now came the hardest part. It was time to return her to the wild where she belonged. On the day Alex released the lion back to nature, Tom witnessed tears streaming down his friend's weathered face, something he had never seen before in all their years together. Alex stroked the lion's head one final time, his hand moving slowly through her unusual pale fur, and whispered words thick with emotion. "Girl, live well out there, my little one. Be free, be wild, be everything you were meant to be." The lioness stared at Alex for a long, intense moment, as if memorizing every detail of his face, burning it into her memory. Then she slowly turned and disappeared into the dense forest. But those distinctive blue eyes remained fixed on Alex until the very last possible second, holding his gaze across the distance. And now, 15 years later, that same lion sat before Alex's casket, keeping faithful watch over her savior one final time. People held their breath collectively, witnessing this extraordinary scene unfold. That small, helpless cub had now become a mother herself, bringing her own family, her mate and their cub, to her savior's funeral, to pay respects in the only way she knew how. The sun began its descent toward the horizon. Golden twilight painted the vast sky of Kruger Park in shades of crimson and amber, casting long shadows across the hill. The lioness slowly rose to her feet and moved several steps closer to the casket, closing the distance with reverence. Then she cried out again, low and long and haunting, a sound that seemed to carry the weight of 15 years of memory. It was as if she were speaking in the only language available to her. "Thank you. I love you. I haven't forgotten what you did for me." The male and cub joined her cry, their voices blending with hers. The combined sound was both profoundly sorrowful and impossibly beautiful. It echoed throughout the entire park, carrying across valleys and through forests, a farewell song for a fallen hero. Many people's eyes filled with tears that could no longer be held back. Hardened rangers wept openly. Even the guards lowered their weapons, moved beyond words. A long time passed in this sacred moment, with the lion family maintaining their vigil. Finally, the lioness looked at the casket one more time, her blue eyes seeming to memorize every detail. Then she slowly turned away, her movement deliberate and final. The male and cub followed faithfully behind her, walking in formation. After taking a few steps down the hill, the lioness suddenly stopped. She looked back over her shoulder, her gaze fixed on the casket, as if saying a final goodbye, as if promising to remember always. People watched in reverent silence as the three pale forms departed, gradually disappearing back into the wilderness from which they had emerged. After the lion family had completely vanished from sight, people quietly moved forward and lowered the casket into the prepared grave. One by one, they threw handfuls of red earth, saying their final farewells in whispered voices. Alex Morgan, the ranger who had protected this wilderness faithfully for 30 years of his life, returned to the red earth he had loved so deeply. It was complete. It was right. Night fell completely, and darkness covered the park like a blanket. Eventually, everyone who had attended the funeral departed, returning to their homes and lives. Only silence surrounded Alex's fresh grave beneath the stars. But then, an amazing thing happened in the darkness. Three shadows appeared again, moving silently through the night. The albino lion family had returned. They quietly took their places beside the grave, settling down for a long vigil. And this became their routine, their sacred duty. Every single night, the lion family came to the grave without fail. They appeared at sunset, watched over the grave throughout the entire night, and then quietly departed at sunrise before the world awoke. On the first night, the lioness cried out long and mournfully before the grave, her voice carrying across the sleeping park. It was not a roar of dominance or territory. It was pure grief, raw and unfiltered. The sound that echoed throughout Kruger Park seemed like a final farewell, an expression of profound gratitude, a declaration of eternal love. 15 years ago, the one lying beneath this earth had given her life when she was dying, motherless and alone. The lioness knew. Alex now lay alone in the cold earth, vulnerable in a way he had never been in life. What if hungry scavengers tried to dig up the grave? What if other predators came? With such concerns weighing on her, the lioness kept faithful watch over her savior's grave every single night, never wavering in her duty. But she was no longer alone in her vigil. Now she had her family beside her, her mate and cub, the legacy of the life Alex had saved. And so an entire month passed. Not a single day was missed, despite weather, despite the needs of hunting, despite everything. The lion family kept their faithful watch over the grave without fail. Rangers observed from a respectful distance, not daring to approach or interfere. They understood instinctively that this was something sacred, something beyond human understanding. It was a ritual of love and loyalty that transcended species. Alex was not alone in death. Even now beyond life, the creature he had saved so long ago kept faithful watch over him, protecting him as he had once protected her. It was repayment for a debt that could never truly be repaid. It was gratitude that transcended words. It was love in its purest, most primal form. Thank you for experiencing this true story of compassion and loyalty. Please like and subscribe for more heartwarming tales from the wild. Until next time.